I read The Black Notebook, An Interior Journey. This is such a luscious title. And the book cover, I must admit, is pure creativity. Simple and elegant. I mean, look at this. This book is The Black Notebook. And it is Toi Derricotte's interior journey into herself to think about what it is to be a black woman who looks white in America. On the back of the book, Grace Paley, Sapphire, Nikki Giovanni, Maxine Clare, and Houston A. Baker Jr. have given her their blurbs for praise for the Black Notebooks. It is a black book with a white cover. Black on the inside, white on the outside. One could look at it this way because Toi is a black woman. She knows she's a black woman, but she looks white. And this is a picture of Toi. Just all of the delights that go into creating a book and what it means. This book was compiled from Toi's journals, her diaries, when she was writing about how it felt to be in her shoes throughout her life. Let me share the inside book blurb with you. All my life, I have passed invisibly into the white world. And all my life, I have felt that sudden and alarming moment of consciousness there, of remembering I am black. It may feel like emerging too quickly from deep in the ocean, or touching an electric fence, or like a deer paralyzed in the headlights of an oncoming car, writes Toi Derricotte, a light-skinned black woman, an accomplished poet. This exquisitely, and it was exquisitely written, this exquisitely written work began as sketchy journal entries over 20 years ago when Derricotte, I don't know if it's Derricotte or Derricotte, moved into an all-white neighborhood near New York City. I wanted to capture the language of self-hate, the pain of re-emerging thought and buried memory and consciousness. End quote. The Black Notebooks is an intimate record of the author's encounters with family, neighbors, friends, students, and colleagues, where she is forced to question what it means to be a black woman living in a racially divided world. The result is a brilliant and startling document, a meditation about the complexity of race in this country, and a glimpse into the soul of a courageous woman. It is also a book about uncovering the denied and shameful aspects of the self and the author's journey towards self-acceptance. Forgot to turn off my cell phone. My sisters texting one another. The Black Notebook gave me not only a glimpse of Toi, T-O-I, and I think that is so cute. Not only a glimpse of what Toi felt like as a black woman in a white environment and black environments. It forces you to give you a glimpse into yourself. It forces you to go within to see what your interior monologue is when it comes to being who you are in the different places in your life, whether it's black, white, or whatever it is. And it forces you to face anything that you have not dealt with. If it's shame, if it's embarrassment, whatever it is. So it's like a distilling of what it means to be you, where you stand in your shoes in this world. It's necessary and needed reading. It allows you to overcome and step beyond and move ahead and delve into those places that hurt that you have not addressed. I love the fact that she writes about this topic because so many times I wonder what it is to be a woman or to be a person of another ethnic group or a person in different skin. And here this person is telling me what that is like. Same as what Esmeralda or Negi was telling me what it was like to be a person in Puerto Rico and then in New York, in her skin, in her brown skin, speaking, being bilingual, and what that was like. And so Toi does the same. Now, Toi she looks to me definitely like a white woman. She reminds me in a way of one of my sisters, and they, I know, can tell stories of what it's like to have skin that is white, but you know that you are black and raised black and very much staunchly in the black mindset, body, worldview, but yet you look white. And that is a unique place to be. The hurt that comes when you realize that sometimes you have self-hate, and sometimes you internalize the hatred of the larger society, and it comes back on you, and then you know you cannot have that. You cannot live with that. You cannot thrive with that. So you have to debunk it like Toi does in many instances and throughout the book. I love being a poet myself. And Esmeralda is probably a poet as well. And her father was most definitely a poet. Being a poet, Toi captures this work in language that is so excruciatingly beautiful. And let me share some of that with you. I met a large, dark woman in a workshop for black women who told the story of the day she got sick of them following her in the drugstore, the record store, as if she were a thief. Now, black people and people of color have experienced that for centuries, decades in this country, probably other places in it, I'm sure. Well, in other places in the world, but definitely in this country. That afternoon, she went to the hairdresser to have her hair straightened, to the same man who had pressed her hair for years. She sat in the chair with her money in her hand, and what went through her mind was how all those years since she was a baby, every time her mother straightened her hair, she thought to herself, I wish my hair was straight. And suddenly, she was tired of that wish. Shave it off, she said. Shave it off. He was shocked. You don't mean it. This huge woman, whose hair I suppose he thought was her one good attribute, shave it off. She said when he cut off her hair, years of heaviness went with it. She felt lighter, lifted. Now, even though she's followed, looked at, examined, until sometimes she has to confront, what are you looking at? She feels better. In one way, she is utterly free. Yet in another, she is chained like an entranced demon who must roam the earth, howling out in terrible pain until one person does an act of kindness. She did not seem to be a happy woman. Obviously, her choice was not a victory that many of us would accept. But we understood, looking at her, the bravery of her act, which put our own puny complaints into perspective. She had cut off a part of herself. Recently, I found that a white woman in a workshop I was conducting in Alaska had grown up at about the same time and just a few miles from my husband's hometown in Ohio. Toi's husband, at the time she wrote this, was black. I don't know if they're still together. We began to talk about the similarities between those two small towns. Each had two black families, a good, air quotes, black family and a bad black family. I could tell from her conversation and writings that she was very interested in examining some of her connections to the past. And I was, at the end of my 25-year marriage, interested in exploring and coming to terms with some of the most pitiful aspects of my marriage, which I was sure had a great deal to do with the fear, anger, and repression my husband had felt as a member of the good black family in his town. I suggested an experiment that I hoped would give us both enough structure to open up and go beyond what we had already accepted as truth. Let's collaborate on a piece about those towns, I suggested. You write and I'll write, and we'll just go back and forth like that. She said, I can't do that. I'm intimidated by you. I encouraged her to write whatever came to her, and she sat down. Immediately, she began writing, most fearfully, about her early experiences with the black girl in her class, Barbara, who intimidated her physically, who called out after her, Amy throws her ass around. She had connected me to her. We began writing in 20-minute blocks and sharing our small pieces. Soon we were spending whole days together, me working at my kitchen table while she wrote upstairs, then lying out in the cool spring sunshine on her glassed-in porch that looked out on the sparkling waters and majestic mountains of Kachemak Bay and talking. Hearing her pieces about what it was like growing up in that town, what it was like for her and for the black children, she remembered that Grabby, black boy, Grabby, he must have been reaching out and touching others. She remembered that the grabby black boy, unlike the grabby white boys, was beaten publicly with a belt as he went up the stairs. The white boys were merely scolded. I began to touch some of the pain of a man who has had to be perfectly emotionally controlled. His mother had admonished him to put his energy into work, to stay away from the white girls. Just 50 miles away, black boys had been lynched. I began to see how our most intimate relationships, our own abilities to love, express ourselves, and indeed to live, are deeply and permanently affected by racism. I began to experience the sorrow of what we can't change in ourselves, though it brings great harm to us and those we love. This book was filled with moments of silence until you had to just pause to take in the meaning of Toi's words. You know, guys, Chelsea Handler, the comedian who just did several series who just did a new series for Netflix. And she has all sorts of series on Netflix. But she did one about, her recent one is about white people facing themselves as far as facing their racism, facing what it means to be white and have much, much more privilege than blacks in this country, amongst blacks and amongst whites. You should see that Netflix series. I watched it when I got back from Montgomery, and it was very much eye-opening. And I appreciated Chelsea for working on that project as far as interviewing white people about their racism and how privilege is definitely a deeply ingrained part of their experience in America. And here it is. I get to this part where Toi asks the question, can whites begin to understand and take in the pain of this racist society? So often white people, when a deep pain with regard to racism is uncovered, want it to be immediately addressed, healed, released. Black people have had to live with the wounds of racism for generations. Even goodwill and hard work won't make the personal hurts cease. If this book had any purpose, it's to show the persistence of internal conflicts, of longing, shame, and terror. It represents a 20-year obsession to observe myself when these feelings arise, rather than to deny or repress them. I have found that there is no cure. Perhaps awareness can give us a second to contain, so that we do not pass these damages on to others. This is most definitely a worthwhile read if you are interested in learning about yourself, racism, and colorism, and all that goes along with judgments in your society, wherever you are. Reading this book, as well as reading when I was Puerto Rican, can make you a better person, to reach and stretch, to be better than you were the day before. Toi Derricotte was born in Detroit, Michigan. She has published 4 collections of poetry: Natural Birth, The Empress of the Death House, Captivity, and most recently, Tender. She is the recipient of 2 fellowships from the National Endowment of the Arts and many awards, among them the Lucille Medwick Memorial Award from the Poetry Society of America. With Cornelius Eddy, she founded Cave Canum, a workshop retreat for African American poets. An associate professor of English at the University of Pittsburgh, Derricotte lives in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Now let's see what the web today says she has written.
Toi Derricotte is the author of 2019's New and Selected Poetry, 2011's The Undertaker's Daughter,
This is so good.
2006 Gathering Ground, a reader celebrating Cave Canham's
so
first
good.
decade. Tender, 1997. Captivity, 1989.
Oh my God.
Natural Birth, 1983. And The Empress of the Death House, 1978. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you and hope to see you in the next video. Bye. Stand in your own spotlight. It's a wonderful place to be.